All right, I've got 10 very brief minutes. God, that timer is already intimidating, to talk to you about why AI won't replace you, but it will change your work. And I want to start with a highly sophisticated visual that I think accurately portrays how it feels to follow what's going on when you're trying to follow AI news on social media. So I want to get everybody involved. Quick show of hands. Right now, this week, how many people, when they're thinking about AI, they're like, we're so back. How many people are excited? Okay. There you go. How many people, on the other hand, they might be maybe on the bottom of this chart. How many people are feeling like it's so over and they're just done with it? Boos. That's my first time being booed on stage. All right, everybody, thank you. I love the energy here. My name is Dave Hicking. Like Aaron said, I now work at Laracon. I run agency partnerships there. And if you want to find, more information about me, QR code, go to my website, Twitter, LinkedIn, all that good stuff. But I don't have a lot of time to mess around. You might be wondering, why is a guy who runs partnership programs up here talking about AI? That's a great question. Earlier this year, I was at Laracon, India, and I kept hearing over and over again different variations of the same question. They all wanted to know if I thought AI was going to take away their jobs, especially for devs who were earlier in their career. They wanted to know if there was any point in trying to get a job anymore. They wanted to know if AI was going to replace them, if they should be afraid. And they wanted to know my response. You can guess my response. It's the title of this talk, so sorry, nobody can do the pointing meme because I didn't actually say it. It's time for a story I've thought about ever since I left Laracon, India. I want to go way back in the old days, the year's 2004. I'm 21 years old, fresh out of college. Please don't do the math on how old that makes me today. I'm working in IT at the UConn Library, which is my alma mater, which, like all libraries, was in the middle of an existential crisis. Why? The old Google, love Google now, the old Google logo we love and know, but in 2004, Google had changed, frankly, how people search and find information on the internet. 3 years before that, Wikipedia was introduced, and y'all, librarians were afraid. They were terrified because suddenly they had to ask the question, do you even need librarians to do research anymore? Because once upon a time, if you were a college student or just did anything on a college campus and you wanted to do research, you had to either go to the library and use something called a card catalog, which is dating me, or you needed a librarian. You talked to a librarian because librarians had two main things that they were trying to do, lots of other things as well. They were gatekeepers and they were enablers. So librarians are trained on how to do what's called a reference interview. You don't just ask somebody, what do you need, and then give them the book, because they might not even know what they need. They need to be talked to. You have to figure out what they're working on, what the assignment is, what they've already looked at. It's going to sound very familiar for developers. You have to figure out what problem are they trying to actually solve. And a good librarian, a great librarian, uses their expertise to help you find out what you actually need and then get that done. And the internet was a threat to all of this. They were terrified because suddenly you didn't have to go to that gatekeeper. You didn't have to talk to that librarian. And not just any info, right, that people were getting, but online sources. They couldn't be trusted. Who is Wikipedia, right? Who's writing this stuff? You have no idea if you can trust it. It wasn't a trusted source like a library. So what did libraries do when they were faced with this threat to their existence, I should say? Well, they put up barriers. No surprise, right? Some of them worked with professors and TAs to have rules like you can't use online sources, or, and I'm not even exaggerating, this is my favorite thing, some of them had it where you had to have a librarian sign a sheet of paper saying, yes, I talked to this person. That was some people's answer to the internet. Others, on the other hand, took a look at what was coming and said, all right, we probably can't stop the internet, but maybe this could be an opportunity to go back to first principles, because what are they really there to do? Librarians are there to enable scholarship. And before the internet, there was no way that anybody could try to make sense of all the information in the library. The internet started to change that. So all of a sudden, librarians had to change, right? And so what do librarians do now, right? If the internet exists, do you even need librarians? If you go to an academic library now, is there nobody there? No, there's tons of people there, but they're running digital archives, they're supporting research workflows, they're teaching something called information literacy, all things they never would have dreamed of having time to do back in 2004. And real quick, sorry, almost forgot my slide there. Real quick, we didn't really call it this at the time, but this is what we would now, I think, classically call disruption, right? Change in technology starts at a low level, it's not good enough, okay, and then it slowly gets better and better. And I'm telling y'all, for a college student in the mid-2000s, Wikipedia was good enough. Google was good enough to do basic work. And over time, these tools got better and better. And pretty soon, no researcher, no matter how serious they were, could imagine ever not using the internet. They say that history doesn't repeat itself, but I believe that it does rhyme. It often rhymes. And today, AI is a similar threat, I believe, to developers. And I've got threat in quotes because we're going to talk about this in a second. But I'm sure some of you are saying, Dave, hold on. There's no quotes. People are getting laid off, right? You hear this all the time in the news. We don't need as many devs. AI is going to do this and that. Listen, between you, me, and people watching at home, sometimes companies just need an excuse to lay people off, and AI is a good one. But what is true is that disruption or change of any kind is incredibly messy. So some places are looking at what AI can do and they're saying, yeah, okay, maybe we don't need as many devs or we can get by with what we have, or they're pausing their hiring or whatever. And I think that these people are sadly mistaken because software is undefeated. It continues to eat the world. It enters more and more parts of our lives and our work, and AI is only going to accelerate that, right? Because now we have a question. What happens when code is cheap to create? And please don't take cheap the wrong way. I don't mean it's great code right now. I don't mean it's the best code right now. But suddenly, creating code is not the bottleneck. So what happens? Librarians had to reassess what all of a sudden they had to do differently with their jobs. And I think we're going to have to do the same. One thing we're going to have is more software than ever before, right? An explosion in the amount of software written. Every day, every week, every month, the amount of code generated is going to climb higher and higher. And yes, I love the sparkles. Some of them will be vibe-coded prototypes. They might go #1 in the App Store and go viral when their information is leaked. Are you going to need a team of software devs to actually fix that? Yes, absolutely. But what if, let's be optimistic, what if AI makes you a better developer? What if it lets you spend less time writing the stuff that you always have to write over and over and again? What if it helps a small team take on something they couldn't have done otherwise? What if it's not bad, right? Because if you're skeptical about this, remember, no matter what, humans still have to actually define the outcomes, right? AI can generate code, but it can't tell us what to do. It can't decide what we're going to do and why we want to do in the first place. To quote Aaron Francis, I saw this quote up earlier. I thought it was Aaron Francis. We should let computers do what computers are good at and humans do what humans are good at. One last note for everybody here. I know what some of you are thinking because I talked to tons of people this week. Every day there's a new announcement. We've already had some here at Laracon, and some people feel left behind or feel like they can't stay on top of it all. You're feeling behind the curve, and you just want to throw your computer in the trash, buy a farm in the country, and get out of this biz. And listen, if you do, nobody would blame you. But it is not too late. This is the pets.com era of AI. Remember this guy? Yeah. For those who don't know, and I'm dating myself so bad with this talk, Pets.com was basically Chewy, which is a pet food or supply delivery site, right? Except they tried this in 1999 when nobody proved that you could do anything like this on the internet. And it flamed out so spectacularly that Chewy didn't even try this business model again for almost 20 years. They had a Super Bowl commercial, and seemed ridiculous. You can't deliver pet supplies over the internet. It'll never work. It seemed like an impossible idea in the late 90s, but now it feels obvious, right? So is it too late? If you didn't become a web developer in the late 90s, were you left out? If you didn't get in the iOS App Store in 2009, could you never make a mobile app again? No. You are software developers, you are Laravel developers during an era where software continues to eat the world. Your job is going to change. There's going to be chaos. There's going to be transitions. Some people will lose their jobs temporarily because this is never, ever clean. But I believe that history will rhyme. And just like those librarians I talked about from 20 years ago, we are going to adapt as a community. So here's my ask of everybody here. Use AI to solve interesting problems that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. AI can generate code, but it cannot generate taste. You have to be human to develop expertise, and without expertise, you cannot develop taste. So let's invent the unexpected. And let's embrace our humanity. That's the job now. Lean into what makes us all human. Your taste, your judgment, your weird ideas that nobody else has thought of, your ability to care. AI will never do that. And that is why AI will not replace you. Thank you, everybody.
Nicely done.
Thank you, sir.
Here's your artisan
I'm
jacket.
gonna give you this to hand off
I
to.
don't know what to do with this.
That's all right. We'll get it.
Okay. One of the last things you said was AI can generate code, humans have taste. How does one develop taste? If that is going to be our differentiator, how does one develop taste?
You have to try.
Okay.
You have to experiment. You have to learn what it is about you that is different than everybody else. What are you bringing to the table? It's your life experiences, it's your ideas. We are all singular as humans. We all can develop taste over time. And AI is just trained on what has come before. It cannot create something out of nothing. Only we can.
Okay, I like that. So you have to lean into what makes you unique, what makes you an individual.
That's right.
And try to hone that.
That is correct.
What are the common failure patterns or opportunities? You can pick which one.
Okay.
That you see with developers working with AI. So I imagine a common failure pattern is I'm not going to use it.
Sure.
Is there anything else that you see, or what are the big opportunities either way?
One thing that I see is sometimes working with AI, you have to think almost like you have a team that works for you. It's a different way of thinking sometimes. Like if I were to, when you talk to AI, sometimes you have to imagine you're delegating this work to somebody else. How would you explain it? What would you tell them? What context would you give them? And it's hard because when we go to sit down and do something, we can just, we have all that context in our head. We don't have to write it all out. We don't have to explain everything that's going on. So I think that's one reason why people get frustrated. They're like, okay, here's my code base. I'm in it. I'm using Cursor. I'm using whatever. And I'm just going to type it. And when it doesn't do exactly what you want, it's like, oh, this thing sucks, right? But you have to almost sometimes think about it like, okay, this is my team. I'm a software manager. How would I explain? What would I tell them to do? It's different for sure. I'm not saying it's the same, but it is different.
It's different, but I can do that. Y'all, give it up for Dave.
Thank you.
Good job.
You too.